Welcome back to another episode of Hey Bucket Live. I'm your host, Sammy Glantz, and this week we have on a very special guest, the CEO, founder, and owner of PGF Softball, Dan Hay. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us today. Can you take us back to the beginnings, and why did you originally decide to form PGF?
Gary Henning and I were running Surf City Tourneys for about 5 years at the time. It had grown into one of the largest and most successful tournament platforms for girls fast pitch in the country, centered out of Southern California, obviously. And during that time, and even previous to that, there were a lot of concerns that coaches had in the country that they wanted our sport to move into a new direction, basically. And they asked ASA to sit down and do a lot of those changes, and they just weren't getting any satisfaction. We decided to put on our own national championships here in Southern California. And it just took on a life of its own and started to grow. We just said, here, we're coming to town and we're going to hold it here and these dates, and everybody started to come.
So you guys started PGF back in 2010, but your relationship with Gary Henning started way before that. Can you kind of take us through how the two of you guys connected?
Well, at that time, Gary Henning was called he had a couple of nicknames, the Pied Piper of softball or the Godfather of softball. And I wish a lot of the people now in the current times knew him from back then, because he really was and still is a phenomenal person, phenomenal coach. Due to health reasons, it's hard for him to get out and about like he used to. But I am the businessman in town, and I knew all of the municipality owners, and I knew there was a new complex being built in Huntington Beach 2 years before they broke ground. And at the time, when I realized I was going to have access to these sports parks, I called Gary Henning, and he knew me as a coach, but we weren't friends. And we sat down at the time, years ago, with Jim Bollinger, Jim Dolan, and Gary Henning. Those were the first three guys that I sat down and talked to and said, hey, I got all these fields. I think we could run tournaments together. That's how innocent it was. And eventually it became Gary and myself as the transition went on and things started to develop. But and that's how Surf City started. And we got to know each other through being in business together. And we had our rough times in the beginning, but eventually, Gary and I became and still are very good friends, very close friends. And it just turned into a magnificent partnership.
Mm-hmm. So one of the premises of PGF is obviously location. Being in Southern California with the weather, I know back with ASA National Championships, those are typically held in Florida or Oklahoma, but what was the significance of making sure that this tournament was held in Southern California?
Yeah, when we first started PGF, we brought in a lot of different personalities throughout the country. And they wanted us to switch this championship from west, then the second year to east, then back to west, then to east, and rotate it. And I realized very early on that we had something in Southern California. And I knew this 3 or 4 years before this. I couldn't understand why California wasn't smart enough to bring these tournaments here, and instead of allowing all that money to go to other places in the country. The economic impact that a tournament brings to a community is crazy. So I started to realize once we did our first one, there's no other place in the country that at the end of July, 1st of August, still has 75-degree weather and a cool breeze. And people that were saying, hey, why aren't we doing this back east? They were the same people that were giving me a hug when they jumped off the airplane because they just came out of 100-degree weather and 110% humidity. So I realized this is the place to come during the summer. You don't have to fight thunderstorms. You don't have to fight humidity. You don't have to fight the heat. We do have some hot days, but it's nothing like the rest of the country. And it became the place to be. And I realized after a while, if I were to move it out of Southern California, my competitors were going to jump right in on those fields when I'm back in wherever, the Midwest or Southeast. So it's and that's the reason why Southern California was picked and eventually just became the mainstay. So.
Mm-hmm. I mean, and also Huntington Beach in the summer, it's not really a terrible place to be, right? With all of the events that are going on with the US Open and everything with all of the opening day ceremonies. This year, are you guys still looking to have some of the signature PGF events?
Yeah, we are going to do our activities. We're only going to do an opening ceremonies, though, for the second week. We changed our age groups around. A lot of this has to do with a little fallout from COVID last year and the amount of teams that we have that we've rolled over their fees from one year to the next. But the 18s and 16 and under level, we've decided not to do an opening ceremonies this year. The older girls, they kind of have been doing their own thing. They'd rather be down at the beach. We really wanted to put on a luau down there and big bonfires, but the parking is so bad. The U.S. Open is going on. There's just no way to find a place down there. People would have to park 5 miles away and walk it in, or somehow get an Uber down to the beach. It's nuts. So we're going to give them an extra pool play game. So they're going to get an extra game in pool play. So they're coming to play games. The second week, however, there will be an opening ceremonies. We've got an entertainer coming in by the name of A.J. Mitchell. He's a big pop teen guy that if you heard some of his songs, you'd recognize him. And Jenny Finch will be there speaking, and we've got a few other guest speakers that will be there also.
That'll be awesome. So I remember that was always my favorite part about going to PGF is not only it's the weather, but it almost feels like, obviously we're very competitive, but it's almost like a little vacation, and you always look forward to it, and it's the end of the season culmination. Are you guys still expecting the same turnout in regards to teams and scouts and everyone that's always in attendance for these events?
Yes, I think we had 630 teams attend in 2019, and this year I believe it's at 612. So we're right on our numbers between the 2 weeks. And I wanted to say, too, go back to opening ceremonies a bit. In 2019, the first week opening ceremonies for the older kids, we had maybe about 800 to 900 kids attend it. A total maybe about 1,200 people in the park. The second week with the 14s, 12s, and 10s, there were over 5,000 people that attended it. It was crazy. So you can see the difference between the young kids and the old kids that have done it 14 times already. So we're gonna, like I said, we're gonna allow the older kids to do their thing.
It's probably the biggest showcase, right, for girls softball. There's hundreds of college coaches there. If you are not already signed, or if you're looking to get signed or committed, that's the place to do it. Are you guys expecting the same turnout in regards to college coaches?
Yes, we've talked to most of them, and most of the head coaches will be there at PGF this year. And we average a little over 400 college coaches coming into town.
Are you guys still planning on streaming a lot of these pool play games and obviously the championship game?
Yeah, we don't stream the pool play games. There's a lot of individual platforms that the parents use, so I'm sure there'll be PGF games up on the streaming platform someplace. The Flow Sports will be there to do the Premier brackets, bracket play on a handful of fields for both the 18s and the 16s. And then the championship games will also be the same format, televised on ESPN and Fox Sports and Comcast. So that's still happening.
In regards to your All-American game, which is hand-selected with the top talent across the country, you have girls going to the best schools in the country with Alabama and UCLA and all of the top dogs. How exciting is that, especially for not only for all of the parents and the families and the girls themselves, but just to see that next level talent that will be on ESPNU and have the opportunity to showcase their skills on that platform?
Yeah, that game there is known as the most prestigious game in fast pitch softball for these kids. You make the PGF All-American team and play live on ESPNU. That's you've really reached the highest level that you can reach in our sport, and the kids are so honored and they look forward. Some of these kids dream about this for 3 or 4 years, and we're doing something different this year. In addition to the All-American game, we are also having what we call a Futures All-American game. As you know, our regular All-American game is made up of the top 40 seniors, approximately 40 seniors in the country heading off. The Futures All-American game will also be televised live on ESPNU, and we are going to be the one team will be the top juniors in the country, and they'll be playing against the top sophomores in the country. So there'll be 20 of the top juniors and 20 of the top sophomores, and Jenny Finch and her staff will be coaching both those games. And so we got something new this year, and we're going to showcase some of these younger kids too.
How did you guys go about the selection process for the Futures game?
We put a watch list together through my staff. We asked Brent Eads to help out a bit. And we then called in about 25 coaches to 30 coaches across the country, put them on a Zoom call after the watch list was together. We allowed everybody to vote. And then PGF, my staff, went through those votes and figured out what kids went where.
I know that you personally, you were just inducted to the Canyon High School Hall of Fame for your time there as a head coach of the softball team. What does that mean to you with all the work that you've put into this game?
Well, that was a great honor. I mean, the 9 years that I was at Canyon High School in Anaheim Hills, anyone that was playing on the higher end of the high school spectrum across the country knew of this school at the time. We were ranked nationally for quite a while. We had Cheyenne Tarango on the mound that went to Tennessee, and Shannon Bustillos, an All-American out of Maryland. Megan Bush, who played for Florida for years. I can name another, 15 athletes that were all Power 5 kids that went through that program, and we did a lot of good things there at that school, and I was very deeply thankful and appreciative for the honor they gave me into their softball Hall of Fame. So, but I've been at Marina High School now, locally here in Huntington Beach, for 4 years with Hall of Fame coach Shelley Luth, and before that, before the Canyon days, I was with Huntington High, where my daughter played for a couple of years, and so it's been 15 years in total, and it's been a lot of fun. A lot of people ask me, how do you have time to coach high school ball with your schedule? And quite frankly, I don't have time. But when I retired from Canyon High for those 2.5 years, I found that I was just under a lot of stress, and I had no way to relieve that stress. So that's when I went back to Marina, and luckily I'm able to practice at 3:00 in the afternoon 4 months out of the year, and I'll leave the office after putting in a day's work, go to practice from 3 to 5. I don't think of work at all. I'm just with the girls, and at 5:00, if I've got to come back and work, I come back down the street and go back to work. So it gives me a break and some medicine, to relieve the stress. So.
That's so cool that coaching has become your sense of relief, from all of the madness of your, running a company. But do you have any memories that kind of stick out to you? Any one or two that just pop into your mind?
I think one of the best travel ball memories I have is the dream team that I coached on with the Batbusters back in 2014 and 15 when we won back-to-back PGF National Championships. The head coaches were Gary Henning and Mike Stith, and then Mark Campbell, rest his soul, and myself were the assistant coaches of that team. And it was just an absolute dream team of Sid Romero and Amanda Lawrence and Alyssa Palomino and Taylor McQuillan, and I mean, there was Reynoso and Folly Avu, Jocelyn Allo, who's a home run kid, was on that team. I mean, it just goes on and on and on. And I know I'm missing another 10 kids because there was at least 15 of those kids that went on, and they were the television stars of college softball for the next 4 years. So that was just a phenomenal time and a great bunch of kids. You know, there was not one kid on that team in that class, in that championship, those championship teams, that had any diva in her or separate agenda. They were just all really, really great kids, come from great families, and they just wanted to compete, play softball, and win. They were champions. I mean, on days that they didn't try, they still beat you by 10 runs. You know, and they were the type of that. These were the type of kids that when the lights got brighter, they got better. Mm-hmm. So it's I could talk about those kids all day long. So
the talent just exuded from that team. It was just absolutely ridiculous. Right when you saw them on the schedule or whatever, you're like, oh boy, all right, this is the real deal here. So yeah, I
remember Mark coming to me, and I think Mike too, and after the first championship, they go, Dan, we want you to go down to the 12 and under division, and we got a bunch of great athletes down there, and we want you to coach that team. And I go, I'd love to, but nope, I want to stay with these kids one more year. They're going to graduate. So I didn't want to leave those kids. You know, so
yeah, soak up all the time that you had with them.
Yeah, because I knew once they went to college, it was a once in a lifetime experience.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. All right, just one last question for you, Dan. What is the future of PGF?
I think we just continue doing what we do. You know, we've got some other surprises that we're going to come out with over the next 5 to 6 months, but we're going to hold those close to the vest right now. But listen, we really don't try to focus too much on what our competitors are doing. We're under the consensus that what we've done in the past has been working, and if we continue just focusing on bringing the experience as we have to our client base, to our families, to our players, to our coaches, the rest takes care of itself. Mm-hmm. So I can guarantee you this: the softball world will continue to get the same product year in and year out from PGF.
Mm-hmm. We love it. That's all we can hope for, and it's still one of the best tournaments of all time. So thank you so much for putting that all together and continuing to help grow the softball community. And I'm beyond blessed to have had the opportunity to play in PGF. So thank you so much for all of that. Best of luck for this one. And I'm going to throw a special shout out to my dad and my little sister. Hopefully they can take home the championship in 12 years. So, but thank you so much for taking the time, Dan. It means a lot to everyone listening.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much for watching. For more content like this, be sure to check out fastpitchfilms.com. I'm your host, Sammy Glantz. See you next time.